Hi, everyone. So thanks for joining today on this presentation on readjusting to going back to Canada. I just want to kind of warn everyone that we won't be talking about things like posting messages or HHTs or Brookfield or any of the mechanics or logistics of the move. And we won't be talking about any of the protocols or public health regulations regarding COVID-19 and the current pandemic that we're facing. I strongly encourage everyone to reach out to their local MFS people who can put you in contact with the local MFRC of the place that you're going to, and they can let you know what's going on in terms of pandemic and social, like self-isolation and quarantining and everything like that. Okay, so this is what we will be talking about. So we'll be talking about what we can face in terms of going back to Canada. What are the stages of going back? What are some of the challenge and logistical problems that we might face, and how these look differently if we're an adult, if we're a spouse, if we're children or teens, and what are some tips and strategies to kind of ease this transition and make it a bit smoother. And then we'll have time at the end for discussion. Okay, so let's take a look at what it looks like. What are the stages of going back home? So it's a good idea to kind of look at this to kind of have an idea of what to expect when you're coming back. And if we look at the first parts here. This is when you first arrive to Europe. So I'm going to invite you all to kind of remember how it felt when you got here, when you arrived in Europe. And I'm ready to bet that there was a phase where you were kind of elated about everything, where everything was new and exciting, and you're exposed to all these different cool things. You're eating new food, and everything is new and exciting, and it's fun, and you're liking the whole experience. And then what happens kind of inevitably is that there's a phase where, all the little irritants add up, and things become more difficult, more irritating. And it's, maybe it wasn't as you thought it would be, and then you hit this kind of low, where you feel kind of disoriented, homesick, maybe kind of down, and then you kind of adjust to being there and to all these difficulties that you're facing. So what happens is that going back home, returning to Canada, will kind of mirror the same experience of arriving here. So this whole culture shock thing, you will probably experience it again in terms of reverse culture shock when you go back home. So it's a little bit of a reverse process. And what happens is that people don't quite expect it to be difficult, so it hits harder. So knowing is half the battle. So we're going to go over some of the stages and some of the things you can expect when you return home. So the first step actually happens before you leave, before you board that plane. And you start to disengage. You start to distance yourself emotionally, psychologically from the environment that you're in, from your outcan environment. And this is the leave-taking and departure phase. And also, by the way, a lot of these concepts are based on a book by Craig Surtees. The book is called The Art of Coming Home. And there'll be a reference to that at the end of the presentation, but I recommend this book. So the first phase is before you leave. So there's a leave-taking, departure phase. You might find that you disengage, that you don't care so much, that you're more critical about your outcan country. It's all normal. You're creating this distance between yourself and your outcan experience to be able to kind of make this jump a little bit better. You can expect in this phase some tension within the family. Chances are that people in the family are not all on the same page regarding the move back. People are going through different emotions, maybe not all at the same time, maybe not everyone is happy about going back. And there might be some tension, some disagreement. This is also normal. Expect this and try to make space for this as much as possible. And then comes the honeymoon phase. So this is usually when you land. Right now, in terms of like pandemics and self-isolation and all of this, it might look a little bit different. But generally, it's when it starts when you land, and it's the first weeks, first months of being in this country. So you're going back to all these things that you missed, the things that the people you longed for these past 2-3 years, 3-4 years, and you're immersing yourself in all of that. You're going for that Tim Hortons coffee, all the food that you missed, the restaurants, the places, and you're pretty elated. So if we think back about the phase, the honeymoon phase when you move to Europe, it's a little bit like that. It doesn't last forever. It's maybe a few weeks, a few months, and you're seeing your people. People are happy to see you. People are happy to hear about your stories, want to see your pictures, and people don't really expect much of you because you're just kind of settling in. It's kind of all very casual and fun. This is kind of what you can expect. As I said, things might look differently right now, and the honeymoon phase might look, very different, or it might be delayed, or it might be something completely different because of like the whole global pandemic situation. But this is kind of typically what we can expect. So, as you're landing there and you're re-immersing yourself in these things that you missed, you're not really objective about the reality of Canada. You're seeing it from kind of like these rose-colored glasses. And then, inevitably, comes the reverse culture shock phase. So, the honeymoon period phase. And all these things that annoy you, frustrate you, start to pile up. And you start to settle into the real life, to the routine of being in Canada. The novelty of these things that you missed has worn off. The Tim Hortons coffee that you're having every morning, it's not as exciting anymore. And people, what can make matters worse is that people kind of assume that you've settled in, that you're okay, and this is when you need people the most. This is when you need to have the social support, and people might not be offering it to you as much as you need it at this time. You might find that your mind is kind of bringing you back to your outcan experience and kind of idealizing how things were in Europe, and you might remember only the good parts of it, the vacation in the Alps and the trip to Italy or whatever. You're kind of seeing the good parts of it and kind of forgetting about all the things that were irritating, annoying when you were there. So you're kind of shifting your perspective and idealizing your outcan experience and being more critical of the reality in Canada, the people, the customs, the weather. And you might find that you're more frustrated, that you're cursing more, that you're complaining about things, about obviously the weather, about how things function, for example. And maybe try to tune in with yourself and kind of notice when this is happening, and just remember that this is normal, that this is part of the process. I'm going to invite you as well to kind of think back to when you moved to Europe, and to think about the things that were strange to you. The things that that you noticed when you arrived that were different, that kind of stood out. This might be things like, for example, the pace of life, the degree of familiarity between people, the distance between people, how close people stand in line in the supermarket, hygiene standards, for example, the efficiency or maybe the perceived inefficiency of systems or bureaucracy, things like that. It could be how people are punctual, or seeing that this concept of punctuality is maybe not the same. The food, the weather, things like that. How people dress, how people communicate with each other verbally, non-verbally. All these things, these same things, will probably be things that you'll find different when you go back home. So you experience them on the way in, and you will probably experience them again on the way back. You might not have noticed it, but you've adjusted to the reality of being out-Can, and you've become a little bit of a hybrid. And Canada, when I'm on the way back, it might kind of the whole thing might seem a bit foreign to you. And what's weird is that you don't expect it. You're expecting to go back home, to jump back like a fish in water, and you'll be noticing that things are different. You're different, people are different, the places are different, and a lot of things might seem a little bit odd and off and unsettling. You might find that basic things like grocery shopping or going to the post office or everyday day-to-day stuff might require a lot of effort and might be more draining than you expect them to be. A lot of people will isolate themselves during this phase because just as a way of kind of protecting themselves. Be careful with that. If you find that you're isolating too much, it might not be a good sign. And you might find that your mind is kind of being overactive in this period as well. It might be thinking about did I make the right decision? Should I have stayed longer? Should I have left sooner? Maybe I shouldn't have left in the first place. What were we thinking? How what is the impact on the children, for example? So your mind is kind of on overdrive for especially during this phase. And as I said, like it might be even more difficult for you because you're not expecting it. You're expecting to go back and things to be smooth. And a lot of this has to do with the expectations that you have about returning to Canada. Expectations about picking things up where you left off, about things being easy, and oftentimes this is not the case. So this all sounds very dark and gloomy, but there's good news, and the good news is that this is a transient phase. It's a difficult one, but chances are that this will pass. So you will most probably get used to being back in Canada, and you'll come to a point where you see both places, your out-Can reality and also the place where you live in Canada, in a more realistic light. And this is a slow transformation. It happens, this won't happen overnight. It'll happen in little increments, and you might find that there are different waves of this, and you might find that you're going back and forth between the phases. So you might feel that at some point you're feeling that you're adjusted and that things are going well. The next day you might feel that you're back to square one or going back a phase. But this is not the case. It's a slow process with lots of back and forth and lots of different waves. So it's not a linear process where you jump from one stage to the other. It's a messy thing, and that's just how it is. So then there's the readjustment phase, and then obviously, hopefully, I guess, after the time, there's an integration and things. You get used to this new normal. So I wanted to share with you some tips, some strategies on how to make this process easier. And during the discussion at the end of this presentation, or if you're listening to this recording, maybe in the comments, share your own strategies, and we can, be stronger together, I guess. One thing that I would recommend is to plan your goodbyes and tie up the loose ends while you're still here. You might be feeling that you don't really care anymore because you're in that phase where you're disengaging. You're already you're in that leave-taking and departure phase where you're kind of taking a distance with your out-Can reality. But it can be a good idea to close the loop on this out-Can experience in a good way, in a proper way. What this means to you, well, it can mean different things. Maybe you can have a discussion with your family, with including your children as age appropriate, and try to come up with some ideas on maybe having a ritual or something that's meaningful that would be symbolic of closing the loop on this out-Can experience. Maybe that would be having a picnic at a location that you visited together, or, saying goodbye to people in a meaningful way. Maybe in normal circumstances it would be to throw a party, but maybe you can have like a virtual party like everyone's doing at the moment. Maybe, going to all, visiting these places again, and maybe, having a discussion about what you learned during these experiences, during this your OutCan experience, and what your most memorable memories, what your most meaningful experiences were during this time. You can, oops, sorry. Another strategy that I would recommend is to plan your re-entry. So while you're still here, so think about where it is that you're going, catch up on current events in Canada, read up on the places that you're going to. If you know people in the community that you're going to, maybe reconnect with them. Try to find some hobbies, some groups that you can participate in when you're going back in, especially for older kids. Another thing that you can expect is that it's probably busy now if you're planning your move to Canada, and things are going to be busy for a while. So something that I would suggest is maybe creating a to-do list, prioritizing these tasks and delegating them between family members. There are some apps out there that you can use, where you can set up, for example, recurring tasks and dispatch them between family members. Remember to break down all these big chunks of things that you have to do into small, easily achievable goals, and setting some realistic timeframes for you. There's a lot to do, and also remember to reward yourselves when you achieve those goals. Important. It could be anything that makes sense to you. Maybe even ice cream. Maybe that's what makes sense. Remember to be kind with yourself, be patient. There's a lot to do, a lot to take care of. And it's possible that you and your family members will go through different things, different emotions, different difficulties, and not at the same time. And that it might be difficult for everyone. Give yourself time, be patient, and remember that these difficulties are most likely transient, that you will get over this. Practice. Now is a good time to work on your best self-care strategies. Try to eat well, sleep well, exercise, all these things that help in terms of taking care of ourselves. You can reactivate your social networks at your own pace, and it's okay to say no, and it's okay to set boundaries with people, especially on your way back. You might find that you're feeling drained. A lot of people want to spend a lot of time with you, and that's okay, but it's okay to set these boundaries and respect yourself and respect what it is that you can allow yourself at this time. Remember that you've been through difficult transitions before, whatever they are, postings, deployments, job changes, all of these difficult things. You've been through rough things before. You have the skills to do this. You can also try to keep your OutCan experience a part of you. Chances are, while you're here, the OutCan experience is filled with novelty. You're constantly being exposed to new things, to new food, travel opportunities, and constant stimulation. Maybe you can try to keep that a part of you when you go back. So maybe learning new things while you're home, exposing yourself to new things while you're back in Canada. Maybe connecting with the people that you met during your OutCan experience. So I'd like to talk now a little bit about the specificities of and some of the challenges of the different family members. So I'll talk a little bit about what we can expect to experience as a spouse returning home, and I guess it can also be generally for any kind of adult returning home. And then we'll talk a bit more about what kids and teenagers can expect. So first of all, for spouses, you can expect that there might be a renegotiation of roles within the family. The roles of couples, of parents, often change with relocation, especially if one of the spouses doesn't leave at the same time. The responsibilities of, looking after children, the responsibilities of taking care of the logistics of the house will be different. And oftentimes, I'm going to use air quotations that no one can see, but the trading spouse can feel that they're responsible for a lot of these responsibilities, and this might elicit feelings such as anger, resentment, or even regret. There might also be a renegotiation of professional roles. So maybe going back home, you're going to revisit a previous career or a professional role that you left behind for this outcan experience. There might be some challenges with having to restart this. Maybe you had to adjust to not working while you were here outcan, and you might have to adjust to be working again as you return home. For spouses and for adults in general, there might be a feeling of isolation. For good and for bad, the communities here in Europe are, well, there's this concept of the fishbowl community where people are very, very close together. But there's also, the good aspect of this where there's social support, a lot of social activities, and it might not be like that in wherever it is that you're going back to in Canada. So, you might not have all these social activities that were part of this outcan experience. But maybe all of this can also have some, there might be a lot of positive aspects to this. A lot of spouses going outcan end up giving up a lot of themselves, in terms of their identity, in terms of their professional identity, especially. And going back home and reconnecting with this is a positive thing for a lot of people. And also, being more anonymous, not being the spouse of the military member in a fishbowl community, but really exploring your own identity, right? Outside of this community. Yeah, maybe you're not finding a job. Maybe you're not going back to work where you are. That's also okay. But these challenges also might also pop up in different ways. For children, for teens. Oh, sorry, I missed a part. I'm going to go back. Sorry about that. Yeah, I wanted to just kind of share some strategies on things that we can do as for easing this transition in terms of for this part. I encourage everyone to have open communication about the roles and responsibilities within the family. Again, like sharing tasks and sharing roles according to strengths, interests, and availability, and voicing what everyone's needs are within the different spheres of the family. And also remember to take time for yourself, individual time for relaxing, meaningful leisure time, and also some couple time and also some family time. Like, it's important to take little breaks within all of this. If you're going back to a professional role, maybe now is a good time to start reconnecting with the professional community, reading blogs, reactivating your professional association stuff, anything like that, like planning ahead. And if not, maybe like seeing if you can reconnect with other communities, maybe with an old hobby, somewhere where you feel that you have the sense of connection. Maybe volunteering is something for you. Maybe being a part of your school's parent council. Finding something that's meaningful to you. And obviously, check in with your MFRC as you get there. It could be a good idea to check in with other military spouses who are returning, who have had this outcan experience, like through Facebook or other social media. And this can help to feel a sense of connection and to feel understood with having this background. Okay, so for children and for teens, it can be really difficult for children and teens. For children, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of changes, and the sense that nothing is familiar, that you know, a lot of children might feel that the ground is shifting under their feet, like quicksand kind of, you know, giving way under their feet, and it can be really scary for children. You know, a lot of children tend to thrive on familiarity and on routine, and all of these things are disrupted when you're moving. And especially, I guess, right now during this whole pandemic situation where there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of things are not clear. So for kids who are feeling that they're losing control, a lot of kids may attempt to kind of regain control in different ways, and this can look like acting out, or being using different behaviors to feel that they're regaining a sense of control. Don't worry, this is most probably transient, temporary, but take some time to check in with them. For teens, teens might be the hardest for teens. They're at a point in their development where they rely so much on their social network because they're creating their own identity, and this identity is created by being exposed to different people outside of the family, and as a teen that means largely the peer groups. And to have to sever these ties with friends can be really devastating for teens. And they might also feel on the way back that they don't fit in, like they don't, it's hard for other people to understand the reality of the Alcan experience that they've just been through. They don't find that it resonates with people. And maybe they find that they don't want to be like the people that their peers back in Canada. There might be some difficulties at school. A lot of people here at Alcan are sending their kids to international schools where they're having they're in small classes, there's individual attention, the academic standards are high, and it might not be the same in the schools in Canada where they're going back to. The academic levels might be very different according to certain subjects. So they might feel that it's way too easy or way too hard when they get back in. So for certain subjects, they might feel really bored and not stimulated, and for other subjects, they might feel that their self-esteem is taking a blow because they're having a hard time following, and it's really hard, and they might feel discouraged, and that adjustment might be hard in the beginning. Another challenge for teen is that they might have a lot of brushing up to do in terms of really basic life skills. So while they were Alcan, they became like these cool international travelers who did all these amazing things that a lot of people don't get to do in their lifetimes, right? But they might not have been exposed to really basic things. They might have to learn these things that teens in Canada kind of might take for granted, like driving a car, like opening a bank account, like using an ATM, like filling a job application. Like these basic things might be very foreign to them, and it might take a little time to catch up on these life skills. So what can you do as a parent? How can you best support children, teens? Try to maintain normalcy as much as possible. So this might mean house rules, routines. Try to keep these familiar objects. So maybe a teddy bear that's significant for a child, or a book, or whatever object that has a meaning to the child or the teen. Maintaining these routines, maintaining house rules. Maybe your child has a bedtime ritual that kind of that they're used to. So maintaining this normalcy and helping them feel secure in this transition. It could be a good idea to, as soon as they get your stuff, to unpack your children's rooms first with all the familiar stuff, the furniture, the toys, the games, all the stuff that they know and recognize and makes them feel at home. And try to engage them in the process, like try to encourage their problem-solving skills, right? As soon as, as age appropriate. Help them kind of have a voice in what's going on in the family, and also have the sense of control and being heard. Be present. I think this is the most important point for like supporting your team. Be present and listen. They really need you during this time. You can, just sitting with them, just being present is a lot. You can encourage them to recognize what emotions they're going through, to put words on them, to verbalize them. And especially when it comes to, so-called negative emotions like anger, sadness, frustration, all of these things that are normal, that we all go through. So helping put words on these things, recognize them, and let them know that it's okay and that it's normal. You can use some visual aids, like for example, emotion charts or the emotion wheel to help with this, to help them put words on what it is that they're going through. You can use, you can use dialogue, you can use drawings or play, whatever works to kind of, have these conversations going about what it is that they're going through. And you can also model this. So talk about what it is that you're going. Talk about emotions. Talk about different things that you're going through, and try to help them see that you have strategies, that there are things that that you do to overcome challenges, and maybe they can try some of these same things, right? So to kind of model this, like the way that you overcome challenges. So check in with them. You can talk to them about the stages of reentry, this idea of reverse culture shock, let them know that it's normal, and let them know what to expect. And because, as maybe in the first part of the presentation, a lot of it has to do with the expectations about going back. So if they expect that it might be difficult, this is already a big start. Help them grow roots when you arrive, so whatever that means for them, something, hobbies, sports, connecting with kids, their age, and just, making friends and integrating the community where they're at. Again, be patient. It might be difficult for teens, but teens are really good at being, at bouncing back and adjusting to difficult situations, so most likely this will be okay in the end. I want to share with some red flags to look out for, and maybe this could be, if these things persist, continue, become more severe, maybe it could be a good idea to seek help, maybe reaching out to your MFRC or a local clinician. But some things that you might look out for, you might see that your regressive behavior. So, for example, that a child may go back to behaviors that he or she or they may have outgrown. For example, toilet training. A child who has been toilet trained, has having difficulty with that, or going back to bedwetting or thumb sucking or things like that. So going back to stages that they have already outgrown. They might be more clingy. A little bit of that is to be expected, but like more clingy, or might display more anxiety in terms of separation. So might get really it might be really difficult for them to be away from their caregivers. A lot of children will instead of saying, well, I'm feeling this or I'm feeling that in terms of like their emotional, psychological well-being, we'll talk about psychosomatic symptoms. So they will complain of headaches, or stomach aches. So that's also kind of something to keep in mind, that maybe maybe these are things that are related to this transition. Obviously, check with a doctor if there are some physical things going on. But it could also be part of this this picture. For teens especially, it might be some acting out of So it might look like isolation, it might be running away, or using substances like alcohol, drugs, and things like that. Just keep an eye out for that, and try to be present and refer and seek help as necessary. So I want to kind of end on this note. So as I said, you got this. You've been through, as military families, you've been through a lot of difficult situations in the past. You've grown through these situations. You have so many tools in your toolbox to go through the challenge that is ahead. You'll get through this. You got this. And there are services and people around you who are there to support you. And reach out as necessary. There's, the MFS people here in Europe who are here for you. I'm part of this, and there's also the MFRC in Canada who are there to support you. And my contact information is here. I think it's the next slide, though. But feel free to reach out and to ask for help, and I'll support you as I can. Now the next slide is about the book, The Art of Coming Home. I recommend this book. It's on experience, what you can expect returning to a country that you called home, and what it can look like. So this is a book by Greg Storkey. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out. Email is better right now because of the social isolation. And that's it for the kind of more formal part of this presentation. I suggest that maybe we can end the recording, and if people who are listening to the recording want to reach out, please do so, and we can continue with the discussion.